and you don't need the backstory of the agenda for that, and you don't need a bunch of other stuff for that because that's like a whole component of its own, right? I mean,
Yes.
so there are other things. I mean, I could just keep going, but do you see how I mean? I see
Right.
like six role playing games all rammed together.
Right.
And that's one thing first is that, and the reason I keep talking about it in relationship to something like Strike Force is I say, well, in your story that you play with DC Heroes, you were able to just keep enjoying the addition of shit, as you went along,
Right.
and you didn't just mainline it, from the start.
Right.
So here, how am I supposed to be able to process, use, and enjoy and make my own something that you made your own in an incremental fashion?
Right.
Right. And so I'm kind of looking at this going, this is a huge basket, right? I mean, he didn't make this with a huge basket. That's not how you did it.
Right.
So how is it supposed to be functional that I get to play it? I mean, obviously, it's kind of like you got all the fun and then I get to buy this thing.
Okay.
So
Right.
Jonathan Tweet said exactly the same thing about Over the Edge. He even kind of almost in the first edition of Over the Edge. There's this wistful or puzzled paragraph or two where he's going. It's clear he's uncomfortable with the fact that they're presenting what they generated through play over years in as a fixed setting. It just he knows
Right.
somehow as an author that this is incompatible. That the way he got this stuff was to play his cool game, and now getting this stuff is supposed to be part of playing the cool game. That there's something that doesn't work about that. So
Right.
the thing that I would ask is, from the beginning you've said you built this thing through play, then you did it as a comic, and then making the role playing game of it was actually suggested by someone else. To what extent are you really committed to all that content being in one place, or is that just a leftover artifact of all this history?
Well, some of it is from play. Some of it is definitely from play. But as we wrote it, when we wrote the comic book, that's where we started setting stuff down. And then, we look back at the sources like Lords of Light, Kirby's New Gods, just, and then trying to make it all fit together
Well, and
as a
see,
puzzle.
that's the thing, though. I mean, I was trying to say that the construct of building that
Yep.
enjoyable or as necessary as it seemed to you back in the 90s when a huge world built, all fit together kind of
Right.
thing was an ideal. Is that really where you need to be in terms of making this game the most playable and powerful thing that you want it to be now? In other words, so
Um,
which of these pieces really could just be left as part of the history of your own play of the game and never be part of this publication? Which
okay.
of these?
So are you talking about which sacred cow
Yeah,
can we kill? I've
specifically of
thought
the
about that,
content.
of just the background and
Yeah.
content.
Hmm.
That's what we're doing right now. Basically, what I'm trying to do is pare everything down so it's not you
Right.
drinking from a water hose.
Right.
Um,
Well, and also that
because
what we're left with is the most pregnant stuff.
right,
The what we're
right,
left with is the stuff that would turn into my fourth world. Now, I'm not talking about a blank slate. I mean, you're giving
right,
me
right,
really specific stuff, and I also don't mind that some of it is highly specific, highly has very strong fictional identity. The point
right.
is that it has that quality of to be used, the quality of not done, not
Right.
finished. And so, if I would speculate that to go by the New Gods and to go by some of the other influences that I just mentioned, to go by Lord of Light, we are definitely talking about people
Hmm.
who find themselves in the positions of godhood in very much the ancient world sense, right?
Right.
That kind of godhood. And so, this is where everything that you've got about dealing with institutions and societies as adversaries and allies, things that you strengthen, things that you fight. I am fighting the CIA, and it's got scores.
Okay.
Right. I mean, you've got that in there.
Right.
And then there's so that notion that you are kind of elevated as an individual to the point where you and your buddies can take on an institution of that sort, whether real life or fictional. And so with with that going on, it it just doesn't really have a place for your classic role playing scenario where one day the homeless guy staggers in front of you, gasps out your mother's maiden name, dies, and while handing you the medallion. And
Right.
I just made that up.
Right.
And then
I just like that.
and then and then you basically every fight you get into gives you a clue, and every clue you get leads you to another fight. And when the when the clock starts, when the countdown starts for the end of the session, then all of a sudden you find out that it's going down in the warehouse at midnight,
Right.
and then you do whatever it is you do there. So you recognize we're not talking about that shit at all.
No.
We're talking
No.
about
This.
proactivity that is pretty serious. Right?
Yes. Mine. The whole thing is that. And the thing is I come from a place where I love comic books and I love the tropes and I love the concepts. I love all of the goofiness that are comics.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's not what I wanted to do. And this is the weird part. This is the part that I struggle with, is that I love that, but that's not what I'm doing here. However, I'm still doing it within that framework. And that's where I think some of the tug of war comes from. And I think that's where some of the conflict, not the conflict in the game, but the conflict of me designing this is because when I tell people it is not a superhero game, you're not stopping someone from poisoning the water supply, but you could. But if you are, it's for some greater good or for some greater purpose, not even necessarily good, but a greater purpose than,
why don't we get out of this shit? I get this in Europe all the time. I say champions,
right?
Champions now, superhero games. Say I don't like superheroes. And
right.
I talked to them for a little bit, and they fucking love superheroes, and they're really good.
No, they all do.
Right.
No,
but the point is that the word superhero or superhero comics has created what, frankly, in the history of these things, is the teeniest, tiniest nugget, a cultural artifact within it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
well, yeah, it's just
read Captain Marvel during the 1950s, and it's this fucking amazing, cosmic, funny, wild shit, right? I mean, one of the villains is a worm. He's like this massive,
he's awesome.
like mind control, mind genius worm.
Yep.
Right? What the hell?
Yep.
And so the thing that I'm driving at is that let's just stop the whole is it or isn't it a superhero thing at all.
Right.
Let's just stop.
No, it is.
Let's forget all that, right? Let's recognize that comic doesn't mean anything. Comics are a medium. Mediums can hold anything. So screw it, right? Screw that. Let's just get away from all that. And you talk about those different influences and what that means to you as a creator. What I'm driving at, first of all, is to say what parts of the fictional material are perfectly adequate pieces of that, but are they necessary for the most powerful play that I might do with it?
Right.
And the notion of the notion of there is evil in the world, and this evil is these techniques of mass manipulation.
Right.
And whether they are caused by these aliens who crash landed here, etc., that's great, because that gives us sort of a fictional hook to hang it on, right? Sort of a face, right? To give, when you're talking about techniques of social and mass manipulation, in your setup, you've got a historical face to hang that on. That's this. These are the people who did it. These are the people who taught it to us. These are the people who are doing
Right.
it today, even the bastards, because it's bad.
Right.
So we've got that going on, and the notion that you are, godly enough or super enough or somehow transcended enough to deal with that is basically our chance, right? Because who could possibly combat the ability to convince huge numbers of people to do something insanely stupid?
Right.
How can you combat that, right?
Right.
And uh so there you are, you're going, how the hell am I going to combat that? And here you are, you're somebody who actually can in some way. Now, if we go to Lord of Light particularly,
Hmm.
one of the things that I like about that story is that the people have technologically uh, mimicked the Hindu pantheon,
Right.
and they have done so in many cases quite cynically, and are simply enjoying their privilege, as
Yes.
such. Then there are the ones who have, either because they're younger or because they are more idealistic, um, have decided that they are going to care more about who they are, even though
Right.
they know that ultimately they are just Earth humans and have no particular special nature. But they kind of have come to really buy into this. Um, and then there's Sam, who is an original Earth guy, who first adopted the persona of the Buddha in order to combat these guys equally
Right.
cynically.
Yep.
And so then the cool part of the whole book is to investigate how the philosophies in question, granted, somewhat somewhat modulated through the eyes of a 20-year-old hippie, right?
Right.
I mean, his Roger Zelazny's notion of Buddhism at the time of writing, which is fine, and how that actually becomes very powerful. That he that issues of enlightenment and so forth do become very powerful in this story. So here we have your situation. We've got my situation as a player. If I'm playing some character and I've got my powers and whatnot, when and how do I start saying, "Wait a minute, I I'm starting to care." Right? I'm starting to buy into this. I'm starting to be. I mean, I called myself, I don't know. I
Yeah.
called myself,
Whatever.
Hellmaster or something,
Right.
and now, sons of bitches who've been trying to mess with humans for all these centuries, you got Hellmaster to deal with now,
Right.
and I
Exactly.
mean
You're
it.
taking it back.
I mean it. Right. This is you've tapped into something here,
Right.
and so this is kind of important. How many do we really need to now muddy the waters with other aliens? Do we need to muddy the water with all of the different? Do we need the Atlanteans? Do
Right.
we need the things like other types if we're not just talking about anticipating the publication of splats?
Right.
Right? I mean, do we really need to parse up so many different? I mean, we could keep going. I mean, I didn't go into all the detail again on this, but let's say the manipulators have themselves split into multiple factions, each one with a name, right? Let's say
Right.
now, and we've got the government group, right? We've got all these things, and it's muddying the waters. We've got the personal, the human becoming powerful and then the human grappling with the fact that this what they are symbolically matters to other people very, very much. And
Right.
then deciding, well, wait, does that I know that symbolism's not true. I'm just Bob.
Right.
And then sooner or later some things happen and they're saying, no, you're not Bob anymore. And then the question is whether having been Bob is a good thing for what you are now, and what are you going to do now?